Hello everyone and welcome to game number 2 of this great matchup between Kale and YHKCHENG. Cheng is now the map chooser. He has chosen rice fields. Classic matchup here, but a little different. He chose it in the rain, so we'll see how that ends up affecting. I think the cavalry get slower movement in the rain. It affects the bows too, definitely. So not a great bow map anyway, but we'll see if that ends up making a difference. Both armies seem to be sticking with what works, and the armies are basically the same. The only difference is Kale has swapped out his katana hero for a little bigger katana line of 5 katana samurai. That doesn't quite make up the cost difference, especially since he's bringing both samurai instead of monks. So we'll see what his extra koku is being invested in. Other than that, their armies are basically the same. YHKCHENG has spread out his forces here along his line all the way over here. He's got some units hidden as well, a couple katana cavalry, maybe trying to lure out Kale's cavalry into an engagement they can't win. They're getting dangerously close to the line. If he could pull that out, it'd be huge for him on a map like Rice Fields, where cavalry is so important. Matchlock's preparing to. Yes, wisely pulling back there for Kale. Don't want to get into engagement. You can't win. Yari cavalry's chasing too. We'll see if he ends up spotting this cavalry in the woods. Ooh, he's getting there. He is. He spotted it. He's seen the cavalry and pulling back. The scouts have done their job, and he is now moving back. Both armies sort of tentatively just moving towards each other. He's got Yari samurai out in the front this time, maybe to take that no-dachi charge. Cheng is still rolling with his no-dachis. And moving towards the farmhouse too. We're just going to try and get that for a little extra insurance. Especially the speed upgrade would be huge here for the cavalry in outmaneuvering the enemy cavalry or just getting around to hit from the rear. So moving to get the farmhouse. Underrated building. I used to talk smack about the farmhouse, but it's really more valuable than I originally gave it credit for. It's actually a pretty good building. So we'll see if that ends up being a factor too. Now Kale is moving his cavalry through here to try and split Cheng's forces a little bit, maybe walking into a trap, but be very careful here. He's pulling out and being cautious, so good for him. Now, Cheng's going to try and capture the farmhouse, but he has no bows to respond to any sort of skirmishing, so we'll see if Kale's skirmishing can pull off some damage here that would turn the battle in his favor. Moving up for an engaged too. Maybe trying to catch the no-dachis before they can charge too. That would be huge, because Cheng is sort of just repositioning himself right now. Not in a very good position to charge right now, though Kale has nothing to absorb that no-dachi charge. His formation's a little tight, maybe to put as few men in front as necessary in order to absorb that charge. Just kind of flanking. Oh, actually, excuse me, it looks like some of those cavalry were bow cavalry. I assume they were the same as they were last time. Actually going to be Kale making the first move here into the no-dachis, this time not putting his whole line where they're vulnerable. Charge not going to be too good, only killing about 20, but still better than nothing. Looks like Kale caught his army at a bad time, so good choice there by Kale, I think, to move out and make his attack. But ooh, that cavalry is so scary off in the distance for Cheng. We'll see how he tries to move him in here, right through the middle of that bow cavalry. The spears are stationed there on the side. The Yari samurai can move so fast, they'll have to reposition themselves. The bow cavalry might be doing a little feint here, try and give the other cavalry some room to go in. Looks like they're both katana cavalry, so it's going to be very dangerous to get around the rear. Samurai's wavering down to 46, not going in to stand and fight for the general. Neither of them, actually. It's kind of interesting. Maybe they're used to playing melee generals or something. Katana cavalry needs to move or do something. Is that it? Yeah, kind of sloppy positioning there. Gets caught up in the infantry battle. It's definitely not good, and not even going to notice the bow cavalry going to the general. Not going to be huge since they're just bow cavalry, but they will do some damage, and it's going to put some pressure here on Kale to make some moves. Cavalry hits the matchlocks, but in this day and age, matchlocks aren't as scary as they used to be, and not as big of a factor. Might have been a little waste of some cavalry, as it's down to half strength, and that one's about to go too. So Cheng has lost barely any of his cavalry, and Kale has committed quite a bit of his, so he's definitely a disadvantage here on a map like Rice Fields. He's just getting split too. He's just sort of waiting for it and microing elsewhere. He's got a lot to micro, because it looks like Cheng is starting his cavalry attack here on this side too. Gonna catch this Yari cavalry standing still. That one's gonna be wiped out in seconds. General hit by another charge from katana cavalry. Only at 12 men right now. The general's gonna go down fast. Bows make a nice distraction there for the katana cavalry, but he just doesn't have enough infantry on the field right now to really stand up to this. But he does get a nice charge in the rear, especially now his general's in stand and fight. That's going to bring some wavering despite rally being popped, but Yari samurai are positioned to try and take down any cavalry. This cavalry here cannot make a move, but the other one sure can. After dealing with the bow's sight, they're not a big enough a threat to worry about, and it's going right into the rear of the katana samurai who are wavering, and that's going to send them there they go. They've shattered. More wavering along the line. Looks like Cheng's going to pull this one out, spreading his army out nice and wide, getting the better of the micro battle there and bringing all of his cavalry in for these big charges here at the end. Mass wavering on Kale's side now. Doesn't have quite enough to stand up to it. Last cavalry units are about to go. One is wavering. One is pulling out of the fight. Not going to be able to make it back in time. There we go. More wavering here on the edges. Rally's been popped, but it's not going to be enough. Looks like Cheng's going to take this in a 2-0 sweep, but a very close sweep it was. Sometimes the numbers lie. Pretty close matchup in my opinion. So close, but just doesn't have enough in the end. Cavalry all died too early. That left Cheng's cavalry totally free to walk in and clean up. So there it is. Cheng takes 2 games of this series and ends up advancing in the winner's bracket. See you back on the main menu. And there you have it. YHKCHENG is taking the series 2-0, but a very close series, I thought, definitely. A few mistakes there by Kale ended up being his undoing. A nearly perfect match by by Cheng was what ended up deciding it. Great micro there on his cavalry. Good choice of units for the maps. Managed to pull it out with that 2 Nodachi build. It's a very good build. If you use the 6 Katana Samurai sort of build, you really should consider bringing a Nodachi or 2. Being able to take out half the enemy infantry like we saw in that first game is absolutely huge. It's harder to use, much harder to micro, and you have to be much more aware of your terrain and positioning and timing especially. It's much more challenging, but it can be very rewarding as we saw in that first game. Wasn't so much in the second. As you can see, Kale did a better job of judging his attack and going with the Nodachis wouldn't get such a big charge off. But unfortunately, this cavalry being lost early on, it just made Cheng wide open to attack. So, great match by both of the competitors. Looks like Kale's going down to the loser's bracket. Cheng is moving on, but of course he can still fight his way back up from the loser's bracket. I hope he does a good job. Looking forward to see both of their matches in the future. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you in the next match.